My name is Damon. I'm 32, work as a graphic designer for a mid-sized marketing firm, and have lived in the same apartment building for nearly 4 years. It's one of those converted industrial spaces in the not-quite gentrified part of the city. Exposed brick walls, high ceilings, large windows, and rent that keeps creeping up but remains just within my budget. I like to think of myself as observant, someone who notices details others might miss. It's part of what makes me good at my job. But somehow, I missed the mystery unfolding right across the hall from me for almost 3 years. Apartment 4C, directly opposite my 4D, belongs to a man named Travis. When I first moved in, I made the usual neighborly efforts, a smile and nod when we passed in the hallway, a brief hello by the mailboxes, general pleasantries about the weather or building maintenance when we happened to share an elevator. He always responded politely, but never extended these interactions. Over time, our exchanges dwindled to simple acknowledgments, a quick nod, perhaps a half-smile, before returning to our separate lives. What I knew about Travis was limited to observable facts. He was around my age, perhaps a couple years older, with dark hair usually in need of a trim, blue eyes behind tortoiseshell glasses, and a wardrobe consisting primarily of faded jeans and plain t-shirts. He kept irregular hours, sometimes leaving early in the morning, other times not emerging until late afternoon. He rarely had visitors, kept his apartment quiet, and took delivery food more often than grocery deliveries. In short, Travis was the perfect neighbor, unobtrusive, considerate, and largely invisible in my daily life. Until last September, when things began to change. It started with the packages. Living across the hall meant I could see the comings and goings outside his door, and suddenly, there seemed to be a package delivery almost daily. Small padded envelopes mostly, occasionally larger boxes, all addressed to Travis Elliott. I noted his last name from the labels. I wouldn't have thought anything of it. Online shopping is hardly unusual, except for his behavior when collecting them. He'd wait until the hallway was empty, open his door just enough to scan the area, then quickly grab the package and retreat inside. Once, when I unexpectedly emerged from my apartment as he was retrieving a delivery, he clutched the package to his chest like it contained state secrets and offered a strained smile before disappearing into 4C. Then came the odd hours. Travis had always kept a somewhat unpredictable schedule, but now there seemed to be a pattern to his irregularity. For weeks at a time, he would be nocturnal, the glow of lights visible under his door until 4 or 5 a.m., followed by silence until mid-afternoon. Then suddenly, he'd switch to rising before dawn, tapping away at what I assumed was a keyboard. The walls in our building are reasonably thick, but the distinctive click-clack would sometimes carry through until normal working hours. Most peculiar were the notes. Travis had taken to carrying a small notebook everywhere, jotting things down at seemingly random moments. Once, while we were both waiting for the elevator, he suddenly pulled out the notebook, scribbled something furiously, then glanced up to find me watching. He'd mumbled something about, just an idea, and stared intently at the elevator doors until they opened. I'm not proud to admit that my curiosity grew into a mild obsession. I found myself listening for his door, noting his comings and goings, speculating about the packages. Was he running some kind of illegal business? Dealing in pharmaceuticals, perhaps? But no, that didn't fit the scholarly, somewhat disheveled vibe he gave off. Online gambling? Day trading? Some kind of obsessive collector? None of the theories quite fit. The mystery might have remained unsolved if not for Mrs. Abernathy in 2B and her perpetually problematic plumbing. One Tuesday afternoon in late October, I returned home to find water dripping from my kitchen ceiling, a slow but steady stream that threatened my hardwood floors. After a panic call to the building manager, I learned that Mrs. Abernathy's latest bathroom issue had affected several apartments, including mine and, potentially, Travis's. "Can you check with 4C?" the manager asked, sounding harried. "I can't reach him by phone, and I need to know if he's experiencing leakage too." And that's how I found myself knocking on Travis's door with a legitimate reason to invade his privacy. I didn't expect him to be home. It was just past 3 p.m., and I hadn't heard any movement from his apartment. But to my surprise, the door opened almost immediately. Travis stood there in sweatpants and a faded University of Michigan t-shirt, hair sticking up at odd angles, eyes slightly unfocused, as if I'd interrupted deep concentration. Behind him, I caught a glimpse of his apartment, Specifically, a living room dominated by a large desk with not one but three computer monitors, surrounded by what appeared to be organized chaos, stacks of papers, books piled on every surface, and walls covered in what looked like storyboards or mind maps. "Sorry to bother you," I began, dragging my attention back to Travis, who was looking increasingly uncomfortable with my presence at his door. "There's a plumbing issue with 2B. It's leaking into my place, and the manager wanted me to check if you're having problems too." Travis blinked, processing this information. "Oh, no, no leaks that I've noticed. But I haven't been in the kitchen for a while. Let me check." He hesitated, clearly reluctant to invite me in, then seemed to resign himself to the necessity. "You might as well come in while I look, in case you need to describe the damage to the manager." I followed him into the apartment, trying not to appear as curious as I felt. The place had the same layout as mine, open-plan living and kitchen area, with a hallway leading to the bedroom and bathroom, but the similarities ended there. While my apartment was minimalist and carefully curated, Travis's space looked like a creative tornado had swept through it. Every surface held books, papers, or post-it notes. The walls were covered with what I now recognized as plot diagrams, character profiles, and timelines. But it was the desk setup that caught my attention most forcefully. Three large monitors displayed different documents, what appeared to be manuscript pages on one, research materials on another, and what looked like cover art on the third. A mechanical keyboard with custom keycaps sat front and center, surrounded by coffee mugs in various states of emptiness. Travis disappeared into the kitchen, and I heard him opening cupboards and checking under the sink. I knew I should stay put, but my curiosity drew me closer to the desk. The manuscript on the first screen showed a chapter heading, Chapter 15, and below it, a paragraph that began. Marcus knew it was reckless to fall for his client, but as James leaned across the conference table, blue eyes intent on the contract between them, he couldn't help but imagine those same eyes gazing up at him from his pillow, dark with desire instead of business acumen. I pulled back, slightly startled by the intimate content. Was Travis writing romance novels? And not just any romance, but gay romance specifically? Before I could process this revelation, he returned from the kitchen. "No signs of water damage," he reported, then froze when he saw me standing near his desk. His face flushed slightly. "Sorry about the mess. I was in the middle of work." "You're a writer," I said, the pieces finally clicking into place. The irregular hours, the mysterious packages, books for research, perhaps, the constant note-taking. A novelist? Travis's discomfort was palpable. He ran a hand through his already disheveled hair, making it stand up even more dramatically. "Yeah, romance, mostly. It's not. It's not what most people expect." There was a defensiveness in his tone that suggested he'd faced judgment before. I quickly tried to put him at ease. "That's amazing. I've always been in awe of people who can create entire worlds with words. I'm more of a visual person myself. I do graphic design." His posture relaxed slightly. "Really? What kind?" "Mostly branding and marketing materials for corporate clients. Not as creative as writing novels, but it pays the bills." I gestured toward his setup. "So the packages?" "Author copies, mostly. When a new book comes out, the publisher sends them. Or research materials I've ordered." He gave a self-deprecating smile. "Nothing exciting." "And the weird hours?" Travis looked surprised that I'd noticed his schedule. "Creative cycles. Sometimes I write better at night, sometimes early morning. Depends on where I am in the manuscript and how close to deadline." This all made perfect sense, and I felt slightly foolish for the wild theories I'd entertained. But there was still the question of his secretiveness, the almost furtive way he collected his packages and avoided interaction. As if reading my thoughts, Travis sighed and gestured toward the couch, the only seating area not completely overtaken by books. "Do you want some coffee? I feel like I should explain before you think I'm running some kind of criminal enterprise from 4C. I accepted, and soon we were sitting with mugs of surprisingly good coffee. Clearly, Travis didn't skimp on his caffeine supply. He seemed to be gathering his thoughts, so I waited patiently. "I write under a pen name," he finally said. "T.J. Eliot. It's not exactly a secret, but it's not something I advertise either, especially given what I write." "Gay romance," I said, remembering the snippet I'd glimpsed. He nodded, watching my reaction carefully. "LGBT romance, yes. Specifically, Gay male romance with explicit content. It's a growing market, but not exactly something I discuss with the neighbors or bring up at family Thanksgiving. Are you worried about judgment? I asked, genuinely curious. I mean, it's not like we live in a particularly conservative building or neighborhood. Travis smiled ruefully. It's complicated. I'm bisexual myself, which isn't the issue. It's more about the assumptions people make when they learn a man writes gay romance. Either they assume it's autobiographical, which it isn't, any more than murder mystery writers are all secret killers, or they treat it like it's pornography rather than literature with emotional depth that happens to include sexuality. I nodded, understanding dawning. So the secrecy is professional, not personal. Mostly, though the personal and professional tend to blur when you write for a living. He took a sip of his coffee. Plus, I'm naturally private. Being observed makes me self-conscious, which is death to creativity. The irony that I had been low-key stalking him for weeks wasn't lost on me. I felt a flush of embarrassment. Well, your secret is safe with me. Though I have to admit, I'm intrigued. I've never met an actual novelist before. Something in my genuine interest seemed to further relax him. Most of us are disappointingly normal. We just spend more time than average talking to imaginary people and calling it work. We chatted for another 20 minutes or so, during which I learned that Travis had published 12 novels over the past 5 years, had a dedicated fan base, and made a decent living. Not Stephen King money, but enough to afford this place and save a bit. He was currently working on the third book in a series about a law firm, hence the scene I'd glimpsed with Marcus and James. By the time I left to report back to the building manager about the plumbing situation, something had shifted between us. The mystery of Travis Elliott had been solved, but in its place was something potentially more interesting, the beginning of an actual friendship. Over the next few weeks, our interactions evolved from awkward hallway nods to genuine conversations. We began to coordinate coffee breaks. Travis would text when he was taking a writing break, and if I wasn't in the middle of a project, I'd join him at the cafe on the corner. We discovered mutual interests beyond our creative professions, a shared love of obscure indie films, a preference for the same local Thai restaurant, a common disdain for the pretentious craft brewery that had recently opened in the neighborhood. I found Travis to be thoughtful, observant, and surprisingly funny in a dry, understated way. His public reserve masked a sharp wit that emerged once he was comfortable. He asked insightful questions about my design work, showing genuine interest in a field far removed from his own. In return, I was fascinated by glimpses into his creative process, the way he constructed narratives and developed characters. One evening in early December, after we'd both finished work, we met for dinner at our favorite Thai place. Over plates of pad cew and green curry, Travis mentioned an upcoming deadline. The manuscript is due January 15th, which means I'll basically be a hermit for the next month, he explained, looking genuinely regretful. The ending is giving me trouble. My editor keeps telling me to raise the stakes, but I'm not sure how without it feeling contrived. What's the story about? If you don't mind talking about work during dinner, I added, conscious of his previous comments about the need to separate from his writing sometimes. Travis considered for a moment. It's the one I mentioned before, about the law firm. Marcus is a senior partner who's been married to his job for years, and James is a new client who challenges everything Marcus thought he wanted from life. The external conflict is about a high-profile case they're working on together, but the real story is about Marcus learning to prioritize love over ambition. And the stakes aren't high enough? I asked, intrigued despite my limited knowledge of literary structure. The professional stakes are. If they lose the case, the firm could go under. But the emotional stakes feel flat. I need the reader to believe that Marcus might actually choose his career over James, despite their connection. Right now, it's too obvious they'll end up together. I thought about this as I took a bite of my noodles. What if Marcus has been offered his dream opportunity, something he's worked toward his entire career, but accepting it would mean moving across the country, away from James? Travis's eyes lit up. That could work, especially if the offer comes from a mentor figure, someone whose approval Marcus has always craved. He pulled out his ever-present notebook and jotted down a few lines. Thanks. Sometimes an outside perspective is exactly what's needed. Happy to help, though I know nothing about writing novels. But you understand human motivation, Travis pointed out. That's universal, regardless of medium. As he spoke, I found myself studying his face, the way his eyes intensified when he was excited about an idea, how his entire expression became more animated when discussing his work. Travis was attractive in an understated way that became more apparent the better you knew him. His features weren't conventionally handsome, but they were interesting, with a certain intelligence and sensitivity that drew the eye. I realized I was staring, and quickly redirected my attention to my food. This wasn't the first time I'd caught myself admiring Travis in recent weeks. I'd always been open to connections with people regardless of gender. I'd dated both men and women in the past, but developing feelings for my neighbor seemed particularly complicated, especially now that we were building a friendship. As if reading my thoughts, a disconcerting habit he had, perhaps from years of character development, Travis asked, "What about you? Are you seeing anyone currently?" The question caught me off guard. No, not at the moment. My last relationship ended about 8 months ago. Work has been busy, and dating apps are exhausting, so I shrugged. What about you? Similar situation. Been single for about a year now. My ex couldn't handle the writer lifestyle, the weird hours, the emotional unavailability when I'm deep in a manuscript, the fact that I spend most of my time with people who don't exist. He smiled ruefully. It takes a special kind of person to date a writer. There was something in the way he said it, a hint of wistfulness, perhaps, that made me wonder if there was a subtext I was missing. Before I could analyze it further, the server arrived with our check, breaking the moment. As predicted, Travis became scarce over the following weeks. Our coffee meetings were suspended, and I only caught glimpses of him collecting food deliveries or checking his mail. Occasionally, I'd hear typing from his apartment at odd hours, a reminder of the deadline he was racing to meet. I missed our conversations more than I expected. Without the regular interaction with Travis, my routine felt emptier somehow, highlighting how few meaningful connections I had developed in the city despite living here for years. I threw myself into holiday preparations, decorating my apartment, finishing client projects before the end-of-year slowdown, video calling family to coordinate gift exchanges, but found my thoughts frequently drifting to my neighbor and how he was progressing with Marcus and James's story. 3 days before Christmas, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Travis standing there, looking exhausted but triumphant, a bottle of champagne in one hand and a small, wrapped package in the other. "I finished the manuscript," he announced without preamble. 2 weeks early. "My editor won't get to it until after the holidays, but it's done, and I'm free until revisions come back." "That's fantastic." I stepped back to let him in. "Come celebrate." "I was just making dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta, but there's plenty." Travis hesitated only briefly before entering. "Are you sure? I don't want to impose." "Absolutely sure. Plus, you brought champagne. It would be rude to turn you away." He laughed, the sound warming the space between us. "Fair point. I also brought this." He handed me the wrapped package. "An early Christmas gift. To thank you for the plot suggestion." It ended up being exactly what the story needed. I accepted the gift, touched by the gesture. "You didn't have to do that. But thank you. I have something for you too, actually." I retrieved the small package I'd wrapped earlier in the week, a book of photography from an exhibit we discussed wanting to see. Great minds, I guess. We exchanged slightly awkward smiles, and I gestured toward the kitchen. "Make yourself comfortable. I'll grab glasses for the champagne." As I prepared plates of pasta and Travis opened the champagne, there was an ease between us that felt both familiar and new. We settled at my dining table, a much tidier affair than Travis's desk-dominated space, and toasted his completed manuscript. "To Marcus and James," I said, raising my glass. "May they find their happily ever after." "They will," Travis assured me with a smile. "That's the promise of romance as a genre. The journey might be complicated, but the destination is always love." "Is that why you write it?" I asked, curious about what drew him to romance specifically. "The guaranteed happy ending." Travis considered this as he twirled pasta around his fork. "Partly. There's something satisfying about creating a world where love always wins, especially when the real world can be so uncertain." He took a bite, then continued. "But mostly, I write it because I believe in the transformative power of connection. How finding the right person can change how you see yourself and the world. That's universal, regardless of the genders involved." "That's beautiful," I said, genuinely moved by his explanation. "And probably why your books are successful." That authenticity comes through. He looked pleased by the compliment. Thank you. Though I sometimes worry my personal experience doesn't match what I write. The grand passions, the certainty, the willingness to risk everything for love. I haven't exactly lived that. Maybe you're saving it for the right story, I suggested, then immediately felt foolish for the trite response. But Travis didn't seem to find it trite. His eyes met mine across the table, holding my gaze with an intensity that made my heart beat faster. Maybe I am. The moment stretched between us, charged with possibility. Then Travis looked down, breaking the connection. This pasta is excellent, by the way. Hidden talents. We finished dinner with lighter conversation, holiday plans, both of us staying in the city, work projects for the new year, a debate about the best coffee shop in the neighborhood. After helping me clean up, Travis suggested we open our gifts. You first, he insisted, watching expectantly as I unwrapped the package he'd brought. Inside was a hardcover book, not one of his, as I might have expected, but a limited edition of my favorite film director's production diaries, complete with original concept art and behind-the-scenes photographs. I'd mentioned my admiration for the director once, in passing, during one of our coffee breaks. Travis, this is incredible, I said, carefully turning the pages. How did you even find this? It's been out of print for years. He looked pleased with my reaction. I have connections in the publishing world. One of the perks of the job is access to rare books. When you mentioned being a fan, I reached out to some contacts. The thoughtfulness of the gift, not just the item itself, but the effort he'd made to remember something important to me and then track it down, touched me deeply. Thank you. This means a lot. Your turn, I said, suddenly nervous about my own gift, which now seemed inadequate in comparison. Travis unwrapped the photography book with careful fingers, his expression softening as he examined the cover. The Urban Wilderness Exhibition. I can't believe you remembered me talking about wanting to see this. It closed before we could go, I explained. But I thought the book might be the next best thing. He looked up, his smile warm. It's perfect. Thank you. There was another moment of charged silence, both of us aware of the care reflected in our gift choices, the attention we'd been paying to each other's interests and preferences. This time, I was the one who broke the tension. More champagne, I offered, already reaching for the bottle. Actually, I should probably head out, Travis said, though he made no move to stand. I've been on a writing binge for weeks. I should try to reset my sleep schedule to something resembling normal human hours. Of course, I agreed, trying not to show my disappointment. Congratulations again on finishing the manuscript. I'm glad you stopped by to celebrate. Travis gathered his things, and I walked him to the door. There was an awkwardness to our goodbye that hadn't been present earlier, as if we both sensed a shift in our relationship but weren't sure how to acknowledge it. Thanks for dinner, Travis said, lingering in the doorway. And for the book. And for the plot suggestion that saved my story. Anytime, I replied, meaning it more than he probably realized. He hesitated, then stepped forward and hugged me briefly. A quick, somewhat stiff embrace that still managed to send my pulse racing. Merry Christmas, Damon. Merry Christmas, Travis. After he left, I returned to the table and poured myself another glass of champagne, trying to make sense of what had just transpired. There had been moments, several of them, when I was almost certain Travis was interested in me as more than a friend. The intensity of his gaze, the thoughtfulness of his gift, the way he'd lingered at my door. But each time, he'd pulled back, redirecting to safer territory. Perhaps I was misreading the situation entirely. Travis wrote romance for a living. Maybe he just had a naturally romantic way of interacting that I was interpreting as personal interest. Or perhaps he was cautious about risking our friendship, especially given that we lived across the hall from each other. A failed relationship would make for awkward elevator rides, to say the least. Whatever the reason, I decided not to push. The friendship we were building was valuable in its own right, and I didn't want to jeopardize it by misinterpreting signals or moving too quickly. The holidays passed quietly. I video called with family on Christmas Day, worked on some personal design projects I'd been neglecting, and caught up on reading, including starting one of Travis's novels, purchased discreetly on my e-reader. I'd been curious about his writing since discovering his secret profession, but had hesitated to ask for copies, unsure if that would make him uncomfortable. The book, the first in his law firm series, was surprisingly engaging. Travis had a gift for dialogue and character development that made the story compelling beyond its romantic elements. I found myself genuinely invested in the protagonist's journey, staying up far too late to finish the novel in a single night. What struck me most was the emotional authenticity of the writing. The main character's internal conflicts, his fear of vulnerability, his gradual opening to the possibility of love, all felt raw and real in a way that transcended genre conventions. I wondered how much of Travis was in his characters, how much of his own experience informed their emotional journeys. New Year's Eve arrived with an invitation. Travis texted around noon. Any plans tonight? A friend had an extra ticket to a gallery opening/NY party downtown. Thought you might be interested. I had no plans beyond watching the televised ball drop with a glass of whiskey, so I accepted readily. Travis suggested meeting in the lobby at 8 p.m., adding, semi-formal dress code. Sorry for the late notice. The gallery was in a converted warehouse in the Arts District, its industrial aesthetic enhanced rather than disguised by the renovation. By the time we arrived, the space was already filled with a diverse crowd of artists, patrons, and various creative professionals mingling among the exhibited works, a collection of mixed media pieces exploring urban isolation and connection. Travis introduced me to his friend Elena, a literary agent who represented several romance authors, including him. Damon is the neighbor I told you about, he explained. The one who helped with the Marcus and James dilemma. Elena's eyebrows rose slightly. Ah, the plot whisperer. Travis was very impressed with your suggestion. Said it transformed the entire third act. He's exaggerating. I demurred, though pleased by the acknowledgement. It was just an idea. Ideas are currency in our business, Elena said with a warm smile. And good ones are rarer than you might think. As the evening progressed, I observed Travis in this new context, among industry colleagues, discussing publishing trends and market dynamics with an easy confidence that contrasted with his more reserved demeanor at home. He introduced me to several people, always with a hand lightly touching my arm or shoulder, keeping me included in conversations despite my outsider status in this literary world. Around 11 p.m., as the gallery event transitioned more fully into a New Year's celebration, with champagne flowing freely and the music volume increasing, Travis leaned close to be heard over the noise. Want to get some air? There's a rooftop terrace with a great view of the city. I nodded, grateful for the suggestion. The crowded gallery was growing warm, and the prospect of a quieter space with Travis was appealing. The rooftop was sparsely populated, just a few other guests who had similar ideas about escaping the noise below. String lights illuminated the space with a soft glow, and heaters had been positioned strategically to ward off the winter chill. The city spread out around us, a tapestry of lights and shadows against the night sky. We found a quiet corner with a view of the downtown skyline, where the New Year's celebrations were visible in the distance. Travis handed me a glass of champagne he'd brought from downstairs. Having a good time? He asked, his breath visible in the cold air. I am, I confirmed. Your friends are interesting. Very different from my usual design crowd. Travis smiled. Writers are an odd bunch, but generally good-hearted. Elena likes you, by the way. She doesn't warm to people easily. I liked her too. She clearly thinks highly of you. She took a chance on me when I was unpublished and uncertain. I owe her a lot. He leaned against the railing, looking out at the city. I'm glad you could come tonight. I wasn't sure if you'd have other plans. No other plans, I admitted. My social circle has shrunk since moving here. Work keeps me busy, and I'm not great at maintaining long-distance friendships. Travis nodded in understanding. The writing life can be isolating too. It's one of the reasons I value our friendship. He hesitated slightly on the last word, as if considering and discarding alternatives. The moment felt weighted with unspoken possibilities. Below us, the gallery party continued, music and laughter floating up to our quiet corner. Around us, the city prepared to transition from one year to the next. And between us, something was shifting, evolving beyond the simple, neighborly relationship where we'd begun. Travis, I started, not entirely sure what I intended to say, but feeling the need to address the tension that had been building between us for weeks. I've been reading your book. He looked surprised. You have? Which one? The first in the law series. With Daniel and Christopher. I watched his reaction carefully. It's really good. Better than good, actually. I couldn't put it down. A pleased flush spread across his face. Thank you. That means a lot, especially coming from someone who doesn't typically read romance. The thing is, I continued, gathering courage. Reading it made me wonder how much of yourself you put into your characters. Their fears, their hopes, the ways they hold themselves back from what they really want. I took a breath. Or am I reading too much into it? Travis was quiet for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. Writers put pieces of themselves into everything they create, he finally said. Sometimes intentionally, sometimes not. In Daniel's case, his fear of vulnerability, his concern that opening himself to love would mean losing his carefully constructed identity. Yes, there's a lot of me in that. From below, we heard the party growing louder as midnight approached. Someone started a countdown from 30 seconds. And what about in real life? I asked, heart pounding. Do you hold yourself back from what you want? The countdown reached 15 seconds. Travis's eyes met mine, more serious than I'd ever seen them. Sometimes, he admitted. Especially when what I want feels risky. When it could complicate something valuable. 10 seconds. Like a friendship? I suggested. 5 seconds. Travis nodded, moving slightly closer. Like a friendship with someone who matters more than I expected. 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year. The shout rose from the gallery below, accompanied by cheers and the popping of champagne corks. Neither of us moved for a heartbeat, suspended in the potential of the moment. Then Travis closed the distance between us, his hand coming up to gently cup my face. I'd like to kiss you, he said quietly, if that's something you want to. In answer, I leaned forward, pressing my lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, both of us testing this new territory. Then Travis's arms circled my waist, pulling me closer, and the kiss deepened, becoming something more certain, more passionate. When we finally separated, slightly breathless, Travis rested his forehead against mine. I've been wanting to do that for weeks, he confessed. Maybe longer, without admitting it to myself. Why didn't you? I asked, though I could guess the answer. Fear of complication. We live across the hall from each other. If this went badly, he shrugged. But mainly, I wasn't sure if you were interested. You're not always easy to read, Damon. I laughed softly. That's ironic coming from you, Mr. Mysterious Writer with the secret profession and furtive package collection. He smiled, acknowledging the point. Fair enough. We've both been cautious. Maybe too cautious, I suggested, my hand finding his. Some risks are worth taking. Around us, the New Year's celebration continued, but in our corner of the rooftop, we had created our own world, intimacy carved out of the larger festivity. We talked for another hour, the conversation flowing easily between serious topics and lighter moments. Our physical connection maintained through linked hands, occasional touches, and a few more kisses as the night progressed. When we finally left the gallery, the city was quieter, the peak of celebration passed. In the taxi back to our building, Travis's hand found mine again, our fingers intertwining in the darkness of the back seat. The simple contact felt significant, a tangible acknowledgement of the shift in our relationship. At our building, we rode the elevator in comfortable silence, still holding hands. When we reached the 4th floor, we paused in the hallway between our respective doors. Would you like to come in? Travis asked, a hint of nervousness in his voice despite the confidence we'd established between us. For coffee, or? The unspoken alternative hung in the air between us. I considered briefly, then shook my head. I think we should take this slowly. We have time. Relief and disappointment mingled in his expression. You're probably right. Rushing has ruined more than one promising beginning in my experience. I stepped closer, kissing him once more, a gentle promise rather than a passionate goodbye. Happy New Year, Travis. Happy New Year, Damon. The weeks that followed unfolded like chapters in one of Travis's novels, a gradual deepening of connection, moments of discovery, the careful navigation of new territory. We established a routine that balanced togetherness with the solitude we both needed for our creative work. Coffee breaks extended into shared meals, movie nights, and eventually, more intimate encounters as our relationship evolved naturally from friendship to something deeper. I learned that Travis wrote best in the early morning hours, but was essentially nonverbal until his second cup of coffee, that he had an encyclopedic knowledge of obscure literary references, but could barely remember his own phone number. that he approached physical intimacy with the same attentiveness and depth that characterized his writing. Observant, responsive, fully present in each moment. He discovered my tendency to lose track of time when absorbed in a design project. My collection of vintage concert posters that I'd never properly displayed. The fact that I could cook exactly 3 meals well, but those 3 with exceptional skill. We fit into each other's lives with surprising ease. The initial awkwardness of transitioning from neighbors to friends to lovers giving way to a comfortable rhythm. Travis began bringing his laptop to my apartment when he needed a change of scenery, working quietly at my dining table while I sketched or edited photos nearby. I cleared a drawer for his things, then a section of closet, small domestic integrations that felt natural rather than rushed. By March, when Travis received the first printed copies of his latest novel, the one my suggestion had helped shape, it felt like we'd been together much longer than 3 months. "I have something to show you," he said one evening, bringing a hardcover book to where I sat on his couch. The advance copies arrived today. The cover featured a stylized image of 2 men in suits, the city skyline behind them, with the title Higher Stakes emblazoned across the top and T.J. Eliot at the bottom. Travis handed it to me with an uncharacteristic shyness. "Open it," he urged. The dedication page. I turned to the front matter of the book, finding the dedication printed in simple black text on white. For D, who knew exactly what the story needed when I was lost. Thank you for helping me find the way forward, in writing and in life. Emotion tightened my throat as I read the words. Travis, this is... I don't know what to say. He sat beside me, his expression serious. You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know what your input meant to me. Not just for the book, but for everything that followed. I traced the words with my finger, processing what they represented. Not just acknowledgement of a plot suggestion, but recognition of how our lives had intertwined, how one simple interaction had led to this deeper connection. When I knocked on your door that day, about the plumbing leak, I said, I never imagined we'd end up here. Travis smiled, the warm, genuine expression I'd come to cherish. That's the best kind of story, isn't it? The one you don't see coming until you're already in the middle of it. The novelist would know. I teased gently. Some things you can't make up, he replied, taking the book from my hands and setting it aside. Some things you just have to live. As he leaned in to kiss me, I reflected on the unexpected narrative we'd created together. A story that began with curiosity about a mysterious neighbor and evolved into something neither of us had been looking for, but both of us, it seemed, had needed. Like the characters in Travis's novels, we had found each other when we weren't searching, connected despite our initial caution, and discovered that sometimes the greatest stories unfold not on the page, but in the quiet moments between two people who recognize something essential in each other. The mystery of Apartment 4C had been solved, but a far more interesting story was just beginning.